So we're walking in Saqqara, Egypt here, which is really just a big graveyard, including the step pyramid over there. You see that? That's the earliest pyramid in Egypt, built around 2670 BC. The Tower of Babel probably looked something like that. It was a ziggurat to try and step your way to heaven. And God, of course, confused the languages there and spread people apart. That's when God disinherited the nations. And then we see in chapter 12 of Genesis, Abraham shows up. That's God's method of beginning the process of re-inheriting the nations. And it goes right to Jesus. When Jesus gives the Great Commission, he says, "Go therefore make disciples of all nations." Notice he doesn't say people. Disciples, of course, in order to make nations disciples, you got to make people disciples. But then at Pentecost, the reversal of Babel occurs, where the languages are confused at Babel. The apostles are able to somehow speak other languages through the power of the Holy Spirit so people could understand the gospel. So that process of re-inheriting the nations continues to this day. You, if you're a Christian, are in that process, and you're trying to bring other people into discipleship with the Lord. That's the mission we have here on earth, to make disciples of all nations, to know God through Jesus, and to make him known. As my friend Charlie Kirk would always say, to make heaven crowded. So as we stand here in front of the step pyramid, Mito is just telling us that in order for the king to be identified really as the king, he had to perform some pretty athletic feats here in front of everybody. You know, he had to slay the ox and all this, and he had to bring the sacrifice to the gods. In fact, this particular pyramid, like all pyramids, is somewhat of an identity symbol, isn't it? This is, I'm God. I deserve this great burial, and that's going to bring me into the afterlife. This is completely counter to Christianity. In Christianity, you do not achieve your identity, you receive your identity. There's nothing you can do that makes you more favorable in God's sight, because he has paid the price for your salvation. You don't need to perform all these athletic feats. You don't need to have this magnificent burial chamber. You don't need to do all these things that say, I'm set apart from everybody else. In fact, Christianity turns all this on its head. Christianity says, he who will be first will be last, and you need to deny yourself and follow me. And blessed are the poor in spirit. And it's difficult for a rich man to get into heaven. Why is it difficult? Because when you're rich, you don't think you need God. You think you have this whole thing figured out. You think that you can, through your own achievements and your own wealth, make yourself better in God's sight, so he has to accept you. That's not the way this works. God is pure. God is this moral standard, the standard of infinite justice, and no matter how many great feats we do, we can't put ourselves over God. We can't say, God, you owe me. He doesn't owe us. The only reason he saves us is because he loves us, because he's infinitely loving as well. So don't think you have to achieve your identity. If you have to achieve your identity, all the pressure's on you, and there's always somebody that can do it better. You don't achieve it, you simply receive it. He gives us the right to become children of God because of the work he's done, not the work we do. As we stand before the step pyramid, the oldest one in Egypt, Mito, our great guide, just gave us a history of basically the burial practices of the Egyptians from 5000 BC all the way up to the pyramids we saw in Giza, which were built around 2500 BC. Yes. They started very simple. You just have a hole, you lay in the hole. In fact, when we were in Jerusalem, I was sick that one day, but did Eli take you to what we think is the real tomb of David? Did he take you right next to the pool of Siloam?
Yeah.
Because
Temple Zero?
near, no, not Temple Zero,
Yes,
the
did.
tomb
Yes.
of David. The book of Nehemiah tells you where that tomb is. It's not far from the pool of Siloam. And as Mito just pointed out, that when the Pharaoh or whoever was buried in a hole, they'd curl him up like a fetal position because they thought that the baby or the man would, like a baby, ultimately resurrect. Well, that's how they buried David, in the fetal position, in that tomb right near the pool of Siloam. Now, when Peter, in the book of Acts, is recorded in the book of Acts, in Jerusalem, in Acts chapter 2, at Pentecost, he quotes from Psalm 16, David's psalm, who says, "My body will not see decay." He wasn't talking about himself, he was looking forward to the Messiah, because Peter says that David's tomb is right here in this town. We know where he was buried. His body did see decay. He's pointing ahead to Jesus. Now notice here in Egypt, we have this long series of how to bury somebody important so they resurrect. And right behind us is the first evidence of it, the step pyramid. But Jesus, instead of taking 30 years to demonstrate a resurrection, Jesus demonstrates it in 3 days. He's buried, and 3 days later, he's resurrected. Instead of going through this elaborate process where it takes hundreds of men and decades to build some sort of tomb to demonstrate resurrection, Jesus is basically buried in a hole. He's buried in a cave. And 3 days later, he resurrects and he demonstrates that these elaborate tombs aren't necessary. You don't need to put food in the tomb. You don't need to put provisions in the tomb. You don't need to look forward to a resurrection where you have to supply all of these goods that are needed in the afterlife. Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life. I'm just going to pop up out of the dead and demonstrate that one day you will do so as well, and you don't need all of these physical supplies for that to happen. I am the resurrection and the life, and by trusting in me, you will resurrect. And by the way, notice in our fallen state that we demonstrate the resurrection every day. We go to sleep, and then we get up and we stand up, just like Jesus did, and ultimately we will do that permanently. We will, our souls will be reunited with our bodies at the final resurrection, and we will live in a physical place, a new heavens and a new earth. We're not going to be just absent from the body, present with the Lord, as our beloved departed ones are now. They're in some sort of spiritual state with the Lord. One day, we will come out of the tomb, and the ancient Egyptians were demonstrating that. They just didn't have enough data at the time. And they thought they could do it by their own works. It's not done by works. Jesus does it for us. He lives the perfect life in our place, and he is the one who will resurrect us.